So today's tutorial is going to be of painting poppy flowers. I've been painting a ton of these, thinking about using them for a project, and I thought it would be fun to show you guys how I'm going about it. So I'm going to show you a couple of the ones I've been working on, starting with this blue Himalaya poppy. Isn't that fun? I love the blue ones. They're really cool. I did another blue Himalaya, just a little bit different design, format, composition. I've done a red and a pink. You probably can see both of those. Yeah. Red and a pink. I really love the pink, the pop, the contrast here. The color of this little bud is really pretty. And I love the greens up against the red. And I also threw in kind of the same coloring in the buds here for some continuity. If they go into the same project, it's nice to have that same colors in each element of the design. So another red one is here, and again the same thing. I've done a little bit of the same coloring. Green against that red is really nice. So that's what we're going to do. Are some poppy flowers. Now, if you don't have poppies blooming right now, which probably you don't because it's Thanksgiving week, and this I pulled up on Pixabay since I don't have poppies blooming in my garden right now. Anyway, Pixabay, if you don't know about it, is a place that you can pull up images. You can type in the search bar any image that you're looking for, and they have a ton of royalty-free images that you can use in your projects, and you don't have to worry about copyright. So that's important. So this is an image I pulled up from there, and I love a couple of pieces in this one. I think I'll focus on this flower. And I like the buds. I like these guys that are hanging down. So I'll probably use those in this composition. I'm not going to do all of the flowers. I just want to keep it really simple. So yeah, I'm going to focus on this one. And what I'll do first is imagine where I'd like it to be. It'll be somewhat like that flower. I'm not as much concerned about it being an exact copy of it as just the feel of it. So I like the movement of the stem to maybe have the flower upper in here somewhere, maybe leaving some room for some of those buds. And since it's facing this way, I don't want it too close to this edge because it will feel like it's going off the edge. So I think what I'll do is have it up in this vicinity, and I'm just gonna draw a bit of a circle to start with, just kind of a guideline for my flower. That center part is a little bit more down in the left-hand side here. So I'm just gonna lightly pencil that in, and then I'll just kind of get a feel for, you know, something I've thought about here in recent months really is that in school I remember doing contour drawing and thinking, why is this important? And what does it have to do with anything? But when I start drawing these flowers and looking at the images, I find myself contour drawing. So just more looking at the picture and moving my pencil along as my eye follows the photograph, I guess you could say. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but kind of like understanding the value of that contour drawing class or part of my art class. And I'm going to come down here, and that's going to be the beginnings. And then this stem is going to want to come straight down from that center. So if I imagine a line coming through the flower petals and out, I'm going to curve it and come right along the side of it, and that's just going to be a guideline for us. So I like how that's facing that direction better now. I don't like to typically erase on watercolor paper, but my line is fairly light, so I can do that and make adjustments. Typically what I like to do is draw my image out on sketch paper and then transfer it. So there we go. There's our poppy, and then looking at the buds, I want to do, I kind of think I want to come up with one like right here, and then kind of a teardrop shape. So I like the two of these. So now we need to figure out where to put some of these other guys. How about crossing over? Like that. Having them intertwine a little bit. And I'm just going to do a little tiny guy back here. So let's get started with this, and can always add just a little blurry background color here without getting overly detailed in the blooms and all that. Just have another flower in there. Okay, so let's get started. I'm working on, by the way, this is a block, and it's a Fabriano. It's 100% cotton, 7x10, extra white, and it's a nice little size, actually, for just doing some, smaller pieces like this. So I'm going to grab my number 6 Princeton Velvetouch, and I like this brush. I also have any number 6 brush that you want to use. It's not really important other than you want something soft, something that holds lots of paint and water, and that comes to a nice tip. So I've got a nice Opera Rose from Winsor & Newton. I'm going to add titanium white to that. I was one that never typically used whites, but I kind of like this pastel look. You can also dilute, but I'm going to add a little bit of raw sienna, and I'm actually using a brand that I had tucked away. It's a little bit different. It's Memory Blue, actually. I just took a peek, and I've just had it for a long time, and then I switched to using mostly Daniel Smith, and I just never pulled it back out again. So now I have. That is the color that I'm starting with for my lighter value areas, and I'm going to start with them first. So just going to kind of scribble in these petals. Leaving some white area, and I'm going to come back in with some water. I really like that color. Opera Rose, Winsor & Newton, and raw sienna and titanium white. Nice, nice, nice. Leaving a little edge on that tip there. So now that I have that in, I want to concentrate on what to do about the darker. So I've grabbed a little permanent, I think this is Permanent Orange by Holbein. So it's a little more red orange, more bright than the raw sienna. So let me put them against each other. Definitely brighter than the raw sienna. I'm going to add my Opera Rose to that for a deeper peachy color, deeper pink. And I think what I'll put with that is perhaps a little of this lamp black. And see how we do with some of these darker colors in here. So we want a little bit of dark color for the side that isn't facing the light. And I can cause some intentional blossoms in here by just adding some driplets of water, which is cool. We'll work with that later. Get more of that permanent orange and mix it with my puddle there. Rinsed my brush, and I'm just spreading that out, letting it kind of do its watercolor thing. Alizarin Crimson, let's add some of that. Now I'm just mixing in the same petal, trying to get the color that I'm looking for. So Alizarin Crimson, and then I put in some more raw sienna. Let's see how that is. That's a little bit better. And I'm coming right. See how I'm leaving a lot of light, a lot of white area. It's all those crinkles. But I want to blend the top of the flower here, the petal there, because that is the one that's kind of behind or in front of some other petals. So the other petals behind it are making it seem darker. Those are the little details that you need to pay attention to, be observant of, and it'll help you paint more realistically. Although I like realism, but I really love the loose and fluid too. So I like kind of a combination of the two. Now I'm going to here just put a puddle of water, soak up a little bit of it, but I'm going to actually drop my color into this part and watch it spread. Look at that. Isn't that cool? And then I can come in with some of the pink and more orangey color. This is actually turned away from the light, so I don't want it to get too warm in color. So what I'll do here is get some of my alizarin, some opera rose, some cobalt blue, and some of that raw sienna will tone that down a bit. It'll gray it down a bit. Grab a little of that too. And then I can just touch that in here while it's still nice and wet. And bring some of those up. And same, I can do that here. Still wet enough that it's softening. A little touch there. Realized it was a little too dark, so I just went in and grabbed some water and we're just spreading it. Leaving some light edges. Alrighty. Now here is a nice little trick. I can come up from that I just put down and drag some of that so now I've got a lost and found edge. And rinsed my brush off. And I'm coming in with water. A little bit of water on my brush. And again, rinse my brush off, and I'm softening this top edge. Just doing some small little circles. So I want that top edge to be a bit lighter. And then coming back down here, and I'm going to strengthen that a little bit with some thicker paint. If it's thicker, it's not going to explode and go where I don't necessarily want it. And we can come out like this. Remember where the center is there and come out from that. These little guys are a little bit pinker in here, a little bit lighter. And as I come toward that center, it's getting darker. And if I just come along the edge of that petal here and leave a little bit of space in between, That's going to preserve that petal. Probably ought to let this dry, but one thing I can do is start building this center, and I'll do that by mixing some of this Prussian blue with Alizarin and just coming in, kind of dotting around the stamen in there. Okay, so while that dries, I can add my, oops, I did forget one little petal here. And it is this guy with a darker center, or a darker part of that petal. Rinsed my brush. Just want that to be fairly soft right in there. Okay. So I have this Prussian blue. This little bit here is some Nickle Azo yellow and Quinacradone gold. That is a bit too green for what I'm starting with, so I'm just kind of getting some of this darker, I think there was some lamp black in there, so I want to come up right where that stem would be going into the center of my flower. I just rinsed my brush of the darker color, and I think I want to go grab my number 2. It's smaller. Make sure there's not water dripping off of it. And then while that darker is still wet, I'm going to use my whole hand, or my whole arm, to drag that down. So you see how that starting darker and then adding the lighter color into it right away and pulling it down, it caused this gradual blending, I guess you could say, gradation. And then I'm adding some of these fun little fuzzies on the side. Gives that a realistic look. And then I've got a little bit of Opera Rose mixed with that Nickle Azo yellow for some of these orangey, pinky kinds of colors. Just kind of give it a little variety. Let's come down here. Go in with some of the lighter as we come down. Darker up here would be kind of cool. Okay, so main flower done, and we can come back in a little bit and add some other details, but actually while it's still got some damp areas, I want to put in, thing I got to say about that Memory Blue, it's binder, I think, is honey, and it is a little bit gummier, I guess you could say, and trickier to get enough of it on my brush. So there was alizarin, raw sienna, and some of the Opera Rose. And I'm just going to kind of pull out some of these veins, I guess you could call them. Get a little bit more of the purple in that. Soften that up by rinsing your brush. And it's a little bit more blue in that part, which I like. That was intentional. Cooled that down a bit. And we can come in here, still a little bit wet, damp, and darken up some of that. Kind of gave my brush a little swirl there. And I can come down from the top as well. It doesn't always have to come up from the center. I can come down from upper petal for some of those. Just give some squiggly lines in there, just making sure they always go toward that center. And don't forget you can use the side of your brush for some thicker lines. And this in here, we can darken with some of that stamen as well. Put a little of the purple in there. And I'll need to wait for this to dry to get some of the detail. But I'm really liking the way this poppy is developing, actually. It looks pretty cool. So let's move on to some more of these stems. Now there's a really, this is what I keep on looking at here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like blue. And that would be really nice to go with my little series because it's got the blue, like the blue Himalaya poppies. So I'm going to grab some cobalt blue and just have it off to the side here. And maybe a little Prussian blue along with that. And that one will be, I think it'll be this one because the reason being it's under the poppy here. So I'm just going to add a touch of green into that, but I want to start right here with that blue. And then I'm going to grab the green and start right where that is still wet and come behind what's going to be the stem of the main flower there. Notice how I'm trying to not stroke as much as drag my brush. That's how you get that clean edge. Okay, so now let's grab a little bit more of the cobalt blue into that puddle, and we're gonna work in some of the purpley color with that. Now if I keep stroking this, I'm gonna lose that beautiful thing that watercolor does, which is blending all on its own and causing these great color moments. Very, very beautiful stuff. So I'm going to add a little bit of the touch in the pink. And as I put it over that yellow, it blended beautifully into a nice orange. So now I have that on my brush. I can use it for my little spikes. And I think I want a little bit more dark on that side. So again, not getting too carried away with those little spikies. Just enough to know they're there and cause some interest, some visual interest. I want a little bit of a highlight there, so that was still damp enough. With my thirsty brush, I could go lift out just a touch. So pretty. All right, so we can go over here. That one I'm going to do very light. I'm going to bring in a different color that I haven't had so far, which is cobalt teal, and mix that in with my cobalt blue and some of this purple. And you can see it's not very concentrated, it's just very light. So that's what I'm aiming for. I don't want to drag my hand over that, so actually I'm gonna dry it real quick. I lied, because if I start drying it now, some of that separation and granulation that is still probably processing, I'm going to lose that. So I'm just going to allow it to dry for a minute and then come back and work on this bud. Okay, that's all nice and dry. Let's see. See if you can see. I don't know if you can or not. The beautiful color in there. I also took a minute to redraw that. I felt like these guys were too close together in where they hit. So I shortened them up and moved the bud so it was kind of flipping out a little bit. And again, I'm using that cobalt teal, coming up, dragging my whole arm, and coming right even over the edge of that. And then I'm going to grab some grayed down green. I just want this to be more of a background. So I don't want to get too, in fact, I probably won't even put the details of the little spikes. I just want it to be kind of back there, minding its own business. And the only thing I'll do here is just darken that up a little bit. But you can see the lighter value allows that to look more distant. This one is warmer in color, temperature, so it comes forward. Plus it's darker and it's overlapping the guy in the back. So those are ways that you can create dimension. I'm just touching in the littlest bits of blue on the tip of that, so it's away from the light, and so it's cooler and a little bit darker. Okay, so this stem belongs to this guy. This guy did not have a stem, but we can create that. So let's go ahead and work on these that are up higher. They're going to be greener. They're going to be in the light. So I'm going to start with this guy. And pressure on the brush causes you from being just on the tip to go into the body of the brush. So that creates a thicker stroke. Also called a press and release or compound stroke. And I'm going to get a little bit darker on the parts that are facing away from the sun. Very tip of this number 6 brush. It's barely touching the paper. And I will come down. Getting a little bit darker. And I can add some of those little cute spikes. This little Utrecht brush is really great for detail. Okay, I like that little guy. And we only have one left, and I don't know, I'll have to decide if I want to put any flower in here. I think this may just stand alone without adding anything else. So let's do our final stem. This time I'm going to start light because we're going over the top actually, and there's a dark stem here, so I want this to stand out. That might be a little too much. So I'm going to add a little bit more green to that. Whole arm pulling up and coming over. Just softening that so I can come back to it. Here I might just add a little bit of darker because it's under that flower, but lightening it up right there by lifting some of that color. And then I'm going to come up here a little bit darker. Whole body of the brush. Pulling that paint down into the water that's on the paper, or from my brush actually. And then I'm going to touch in some of this grayed down magenta-y color. I'm going to say just about color mixing. It comes from a lot of years of doing it. So the more you practice, the more you get your paints out, the more you just kind of observe and watch what watercolor can do, the better. So just remember that a lot of times the beautiful stuff that you see in watercolors has actually not been because somebody painted it. It's because it just happened. Watercolor can paint itself, so to speak. Okay, and back to my number one. Tiniest little, and some of this is already, is still wet, so I can pull it from what's on the paper already, which is a nice look. And yeah, you know, I'm not going to put this flower in there at all. I'm going to erase those really light lines you can't even see. But I don't want to mess with this. I think it's a nice balanced composition. My dirty, dirty eraser. So I don't want to mess with what's going on here. I think it's pretty. What I am going to do, however, is come in with this Kuretake marker and do some extra little detail work. I think it's just pretty right where it is. So I'm going to just make sure this is completely dry. This little guy, I don't even know if you can get it on Amazon anymore, but I'll certainly link, put a link to it if you can. Also, I don't remember if I mentioned this at the start of this video. This is Artistico 7x10, 140 pound, cold press block, extra white, and it's 100% cotton. I really like working on this little paper. It's really nice. So the only thing that bugs me about this is you can't put the top anywhere. So it's a really nice, fine tipped little marker. So you can do the tip really fine, or you can press down and do thicker marks and come back up and do really fine. The only thing with watercolor paper when you're doing those thicker marks is it kind of is leaving that rugged, rough edge, which that's one reason I like to have a rougher. You most of the time use cold press, but I do love cold pressed rough as well. So all I'm going to do now is just add a few marks in here, extra, and squigglies. Just something about these extra little details that I really like. Don't need to stay inside where your paint line is. You can just have fun with it. I do tend to do the marks more on the shadow side of things rather than on where the light's hitting, although I'm not adhering to that all the time. Just as a feeling of where I feel like it should be. Isn't that fun? You can do it, some of these. Some of the little marks are good. Yeah, I really like that. So, let's do a little one up here. Last but not least, it's always tricky, I feel like, to sign. Especially on these. I feel like it's maybe vertical, but on this one I feel like there's enough of a reason to put it over here. So on this one, I think sometimes I just do sign it with this, but I think I want to go with paint on this one. Again, just go with what feels right. So I'm going to grab some of these bluer purple colors and my number 1 Utrecht, faithful and true. And make sure I don't have drippy water on it. And I sign very small. So it's getting harder and harder for me as my eyes get worse and worse to actually see my signature. See if even my brush is touching the paper. So if you see my signature get bigger, it's because I can't see. And my little fishy. And we're done. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Pull up some images on Pixabay or some other royalty-free site and get to work. Get painting some of these happy little poppies. So don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps my channel. And also subscribe if you haven't already. Really appreciate it, you guys. Happy Thanksgiving. It is Thanksgiving week. So hope you guys have a very blessed holiday and filled with fun, food, festivities, and friends and family, of course. Happy painting. We'll see you in the next video, you guys. Bye-bye.